So I feel like a lot of people know who you are, but they don't know who Zac Des is.
Yes.
So who is Zac Des?
Zac Des is, to me, he's got many different faces that he wears, depending on where he is and the situations he's in. He's almost like my alter ego, because my name is actually Zachary DeRusso.
Okay.
So the whole reason that Zac Des came about was because when I had to decide a handle for social media, I thought Zachary DeRusso would be too long. And I thought, no one's going to want to type that in social media. Fuck that. You're not going to want to follow me. So I just thought, okay, Zac Des, it's like 6 letters. Everyone can spell it. No one's going to have a problem with it. So I just went with that. And I think when I got to the age of 16, I think it was 15, 16, when I was in school. When I was at school, everyone hated me. That's a fact. People listening will probably say the same thing. And the problem was, I was very up myself in a confident way, not a cocky way, but people perceived it to be cocky. And that was because I had like a drive of where I wanted to go. I knew where I wanted to go from very early on, but people didn't sort of understand my vision or what I wanted for myself or how I was going to do it. They just thought, this guy's up himself. He thinks he's the shit, like whatever, you know? And then I think it was then when I got to the age of 17, I started to find myself within the realms of photography and all these other things. And it was at that same kind of time when I decided that I was going to come back. So originally we lived in London, then we lived in Cambridge, and then I came back to London at the age of like 17. And I started following people around, taking pictures. This was from before, but I really started taking it seriously when I was like 17. And then I put together like a book at the time. And this was a book that came out later on in the years. I think the book came out in like 2017. And the whole premise of what I was doing was that I just wanted to brand myself in a way that made sense to people. So I was a photographer, and that was sort of the hat that I wanted to wear. And then I just wanted to be like a chameleon from that point onwards and try and integrate all these different levels. I wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to be like, not influencer in the traditional sense, but something along that realm too. But then I also wanted to be quite open and honest and share things and be a podcaster and like a mentor to some people. So I guess the long and short of it is Zac Des is everything to every different person. To some people, I'm an annoying arsehole they can't stand. And then to others, they say he's a fairly decent guy. I prefer to be known as, if I had a bio, it'd be a fairly decent guy.
You said something a minute ago about how everyone hated you at school. Why? Like you kind of went into a little bit why you think that is, but why do you think you didn't get on with people at school?
I think it was because a lot of people are on this trajectory of you finish school, you go to college, you go to university, you do X, you do what, like that was the route that a lot of people were destined to go down. And I saw school, I was good at school, don't get me wrong. I loved certain lessons, most lessons. My teachers didn't love me because I was like the class clown. But it wasn't a class clown in a way because I didn't enjoy the work. I enjoyed the work and I was good at it and I was always getting good grades. I remember my history teacher turned around to my parents. It was one parent even, and was like, this guy never makes any notes for anything. He literally just like pisses around the whole time. And yet he produces the most amazing essays. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. I think she was quite disappointed because I didn't end up like pursuing that. But I think that the reason that a lot of people didn't like me was because I almost didn't take things seriously. But that was because I just didn't feel like I was right to conform within this box. And it was like, you're not going on this same path as the rest of us. So if you're not with us, then you're against us kind of thing. So I did for quite a while. Like I had friends, but I still felt like I was a bit of an outlier for that reason, because people just thought he's arrogant, he's cocky, he's this, he's that. And then it's actually funny because it came full circle, obviously, when I started my business. And now people are like hitting me up and they're like, oh, it's good to see you doing so well. And even a couple of them have like, when we've put job postings out, I've applied to them and been like, oh, hi, how are you? Like sometimes even when I'm back home, I'll see people in their cars and they'll literally, like one guy was going down this road. He turned around, came back, mounted the pavement, stopped the car and was like chatting to me for half an hour. And I just thought, I remember you. And me and you didn't used to get on at school. But for the sake of right now, I'm just going to be pleasant. But that's the thing, because people think as time progresses that you sort of forget how it was back then. I don't hold grudges with anyone, but that was the main thing. So I think even when I was at school, you're just having to deal with this fact of it is very much, this is the way it's going to be. And of course it's great because it's like you can piss around. There's not many consequences that have like real world implications. So it's like nowadays, if I do something, then I'm going to piss off a load of people and I'm going to have to do an apology and this person gets annoyed and whatever else. The great thing with school was that you could piss around and piss people off. And I loved a little bit of beef, don't get me wrong. But like by the next day it was all over and done with and everyone had forgiven and like moved on. But I think that they just didn't understand that I wanted something more than just that traditional sense that they were going in. And that was probably why I didn't get on with so many people.
You've mentioned there that you, it sounds to me like you didn't enjoy the people at school, but you enjoyed school.
Yeah.
Why? What was it about? What was it about? Because like the reason I'm asking is I can totally relate. So when I was at school, like same thing. Nobody liked me. They couldn't understand me. They couldn't fit me in whichever box they wanted to be in. I wasn't a cool kid. I wasn't a nerd kid. I was kind of somewhere in between. And so people kind of left me alone, but then they still didn't want to be my friend, which had, as a kid, that has a big impact on your self-esteem and your confidence and all those things. And my escapism through that was work. Yeah. Was business I had my first eBay business when I was like 12. I made like 12 grand. And like when I was 12 years old or whatever it was, like what 12-year-old earns that kind of money? And then I had a baking business and like all these things that took me away from school and focusing on the stuff that I loved. So like, can you relate to that? Like what?
100%. And I think the things for me that I was really good at, exceptionally good at, was English literature and language. I used to love those lessons. I had a really enthusiastic teacher as well, which made it like great. And I had like an all boys class and we all really got on. And I think that was amazing for me because it just was like, oh my God, it just clicked. And I'm someone who, I can't stand bad grammar. I love poetry. I love reading. I love spelling. I'm a nerd with that kind of shit. The other thing as well was art. And I think photography specifically. At the time, I was actually the first student in secondary school, at my secondary school, to do a photography GCSE. I was the first. They offered it for sixth form, but I was the first person who did that. Got an A star as well, so obviously it turned out pretty well. That was a great one for me. And then I also really enjoyed like religious studies, philosophy, ethics, and that kind of thing, because it had that creativity of just being a free thinker. That was what I really enjoyed. So I think there were a lot of contrast. It was like things that I was really good at, but then I used to piss around at the same time in those lessons, but I still enjoyed them and maximize my full potential in that respect. But at the same time, I did find it difficult in some ways to kind of integrate myself with the rest of my classes and the year group and everything, because it was like everyone had their own set groups already, or people that they enjoyed spending time with, or that, I think when you're young, you gravitate towards people, and I guess in life as well, you gravitate towards people who are very much like you. And anyone who seems to be a little bit different, especially at school, if you haven't got that capacity of, okay, in the real world, I'm going to meet people who might not be like me, talk like me, act like me, anything that's a little bit different or does things in different ways, you tend to just push it to one side and almost sort of avoid it completely. And that was the case, I think, for me as well. I don't like to make things about race, but literally I was like one of maybe 2 or 3 black kids in my year at all. And that was it. And I always used to get like really uncomfortable when things like Black History Month and stuff like come around, because I'd be like, oh shit, I need to know my shit, because all these guys are going to be thinking that I'm the one. Do you know what I mean? And that was difficult because you almost felt like I'm different in a way. And I think as a child, you don't know that kind of thing because you're young still. So you have these feelings and you sort of know what's going on, but you don't quite know how to word them. So you knew you were different, and you knew that you sort of wanted to do things in a different way to the rest of them, especially when it came to the point of people like deciding what they wanted to do. And they were all like, I want to go down this route. I want to go down that route. And the funny thing is, people don't know this, I actually wanted to be an English teacher, which is nuts looking back on it. Not because of any other reason other than I just had this real obsession with English. And it was only sort of once I got down the road a little bit and I sort of realized, I went to sixth form and I literally did 1 term at sixth form. 1 term. And I thought, shit, this isn't for me. I just realized there and then it's not for me. And I realized if I continue going down that road, I was going to end up in a situation where I was doing something that I didn't like, or you fall out of love with things, which is what actually happened to me with photography as well. And I just thought, okay, I need to make a jump and actually do what I'm passionate about and just go from there. And then that was when I sort of really started taking the photography thing seriously. And the funny thing is, when I left after that first term of sixth form, I actually got a U in my photography exam thing that they did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I was pissed. It's like, how the fuck are you going to tell me that my work's like a U? Look at this shit. This is better than anyone.
Ungradable.
Yeah. I was like, this is better than every single person in this class, and you're telling me it's a U? That was like, at that point I knew, okay, like there's different things that need to happen in this respect. And then I remember like 2 or 3 months down the line, I was like hanging out with footballers and people that were in TV and business and really successful people. And I'm like there taking their pictures to them. What? This is unheard of. And I just remember, I'd post them on the website and on the Flickr and here, there and everywhere. And it started to gain traction. That was when I realized like, okay, this is now not my calling, but this feels right. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. Not forever, but for the time being, this is where I'm supposed to be.
You said something there which makes me think you've got a chip on your shoulder.
I've got many.
So have I. But like I want to like pick at that a little bit, because I do think entrepreneurs generally have a point to prove. Like I do anyway. I have a point to prove to all the kids that said shit to me at school, all the people I went to worked with when I was younger, all the people that said don't start your business, it's going to be a failure, like all those things. And I think to a certain degree you kind of need that chip on your shoulder, because when you run your own business, or as a photographer, you're running your own business, like whether people
100%. Realize
it or not, you're a freelancer, you have to sell you are selling your services to someone. You need to have a unstoppable desire to make whatever it is that you are doing work. You are responsible for your own bills. You are responsible, in my case, in your case now, a team of people. Yeah. Like you have to, like, there is no such thing as like, oh, I can't do it today. You have to, like, whatever, regardless, at whatever cost, you have to get it done. And I think actually that discipline, it's not motivation, because some days I think, oh, fucking hell, it'd be much easier to work for someone else. At least once a fortnight, I think, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this would be so much easier if I just worked for someone else, at least once a fortnight. But it's a discipline of, no, that's not what I don't want that. Yeah. I want something else for myself. So that's what gets you up again and again and again and again. Where do you think that chips come from? Because I feel like I know you, Zac, but yes. There's the Zac Des brand that we all know, and then there's Zachary behind, or Zac behind. Of course. So what is the draw? I want to know about Zac, like real Zac, not Zac Des.
Okay, so I think the chip comes from many different things. I think firstly it comes from being at school and dealing with people who didn't really kind of fuck with you and think that you were necessarily gonna make something of yourself. And I think also there were those teachers as well who didn't really rate me, or sort of think, what the hell is this kid doing? And I remember, and I'd love to name him, and I know he still works at the school and everything, but there was one teacher in particular who made my life like so difficult. And I know that he in particular really, really, really used to take pride or joy when I used to piss around a bit too much and sort of pull me up on it. And I'd be doing, like, thinking back on it, I'd do small things. Of course, yeah, I sometimes didn't follow the rules. Then I'd be getting handed this like massive punishment. And I'd be like, hang on a second, I can quickly see how people then fall into this cycle. I'm not going to allow myself to fall into this trap, but I understand what's going on. And I think when you're in that situation, as like a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, when you're still trying to kind of work out like what the hell's going on, you just see it as all these people C words and they hate me, so I hate them. And then as you get older and, you grow up with these friends as well, and there's sort of like a bit of, not resentment, but like you can kind of see that they're not necessarily happy for you or like what you're doing. And I always say to people, like, you only do things to prove it to yourself. But I feel like that's a lie, because part of the thing that gets me up, and I'm sure it gets you up and a lot of other people up, is the fact that you can turn around and say, do you know what? Like, I'm doing part of this to prove you as a person wrong. Like all the times where you used to say X about me or Y about me, now look where I'm at. And that, I think, is almost like an adrenaline drug that you get hooked on, where you can be that kind of person to be like, do you know what? Like all those years where you thought X and Y about me, and now I'm here. I've got a particular friend, and I think with them, they went down a very kind of corporate route in their life. And the problem that I had with them was that they kind of saw it as anyone who didn't follow the same regiment that they had, in their eyes, wasn't necessarily destined to be a good person or to be great at anything. It's like, okay, in my books, if you don't do things the same way as me, you're not even worth my time. And that was the problem that I had. We never had a conversation about it, but I could tell. You know where you can just tell that someone, like, they're smiling at you, but in their head they're thinking, fuck you. Like, that was what it was. It really pissed me off for so many years, because I just thought, like, why can't this guy just be happy for everyone to just do their thing? Like, what's his problem? And I never said anything to him about it. But then I sort of started to realize it, like, as time went on, and I went like, look, we're on different trajectories in life. And I almost feel like whenever you'd make like compliments or say things, they'd be kind of backhanded or whatever. And then I just realized, like, this is taking up too much of my energy, worrying about the opinion of someone who, to be fair, I don't even give a shit about. Like, and once you let go and you learn to let go of all that kind of anger that's built up inside of you and determination of trying to prove these people, because this is the thing. You can get to such a point where you're proving these people wrong, but not one of them is ever actually going to turn around and message you and say, congratulations. Never. Never has, like, for me, any of these people turned around and been like, wow, congratulations. They said, like, a couple of them might have popped up and said, oh, it was good to see you doing good. But I feel like that's sort of still coming from a place of, like, being begrudged, maybe. So it's tough. But what I've begun to sort of unlock is that sense of just not caring. Because the thing is, it's like, I've proved myself to myself. You know, I've proved myself to people who I care about and who matter. And I think anything more than that, I don't need to invest that time into them as much or worry about what they might think or be doing. Because the thing is, like, I don't even worry or lose sleep over what they're doing in their life. And I'm sure it's the same with me for them. So to think like, oh, this is going to be my drive anymore. It was when I was younger, but as I've got older, obviously, you just develop this sense of they're never going to turn around and say, oh, you know what? You know, I hated you back then, or you were a real, you know, but actually, you know, you've turned into such a great person. It's good to see you doing well. Pat on the back. Let's be mates. Add me on LinkedIn, as some of them do, and then leave it at that. You know, I don't know, but I'm trying to, as I get older, develop this sense of just letting go of these chips, because I'm not trying to own a chip shop. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think it would make you feel good, though, if they turned around and said congratulations? Like, 100%. Would it make you happy?
100%. 100%. 100%. 110%. If they turned around to me and were like, do you know what? You proved us all wrong. You're amazing. Like, I think that's ego, though. I think that's my ego there still. And, you know, it's like all of us have got ego. Some of us bigger than others, definitely. But 100% if they turned around and said, oh, do you know what? We were wrong. Like, you've turned into this amazing person. We're all so proud of you. I used to think that you were an arsehole, and now I worship the ground. 100%. I'd be happy with that. But I know it's not going to happen.
Why? Why though? Like, why do you need that external validation? Like, you've done all this by yourself.
Do you know what it is? I think it's because part of me still struggles to let go of the past. In that respect.
Do you think you were unfairly treated at school?
Yeah, definitely.
Why?
Many different reasons. I don't know whether it was because of a race thing. Like, for a lot of the time, I think that I was probably, hand on heart, I was probably the first person. Actually, do you know what? I'm right there. I was the first person of colour that a lot of these people had ever interacted with. And still to this day, I am still the only person of colour that a lot of my friends have. And that shocks me still. And I feel as though there's a difference in treatment in how they'll... Like, I'm not trying to play like a woe is me, get the violins out. But that's one thing which I noticed from early, was that I was being treated different. unfairly as well. And I think that because when you are black, there's a lot of different synonyms. So for example, it was like, I was larger than life. I was loud. Therefore, when I got upset, I was arrogant and I was aggressive. You know, I wasn't, you know, if one of my white counterparts was upset, they were frustrated or, you know, blowing off steam. But for me, I was aggressive. And I noticed that even when I was in primary school, it was still the same thing. When I was in primary school, it was even worse because I was the only black kid. And that was it. So I then realized growing up that there was this difference that I had. But the treatment obviously doesn't just stop there, because then as you get older, you start to realize, oh, okay, like, you know, I'm going in boardrooms and shit. I'm the only person of color there. And one thing which I think still to this day happens is people turn around. And one thing that really, really fucks me off is when they turn around and say things like, oh, you're so well spoken. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Do you expect me to come with, you know, my pants sagged and dissing and datting and all the like, come on, you know? Because the perception a lot of them still have is that for people of color. So they don't sort of know how to not handle, but interact or approach, or sort of, when they see someone who doesn't fit that mold that they've been conditioned to believe is the case for all of us, they'll be like, oh, what do we do with this one? You know, he's a bit different. You know, he dresses well, even if I do say so myself. And, you know, he's got this sense of purpose, and he talks right, and, you know, he knows how to handle people. What the fuck's going on? And I realized that secondary school, towards the end, that was when I realized that. And I used to pull him up on it. I did. I used to turn around and say things to them. And to be fair, I would have loved to have been at school now because of this whole sort of momentum of people sort of being a bit more cautious when it comes to race and things like that. I probably could have pulled up on a few things that happened and probably been taken seriously. But when I used to do it back then, they thought that, and to be fair, actually, I remember when I was younger, still at secondary school, they actually gave me a person to come in and talk to me about my race and heritage because they thought I had an identity problem.
Why do you think they thought that?
That's the first time I've actually mentioned that. That was one of the big things that a woman used to come in every fortnight. And guess what? Of course, she was a black woman. And she used to come in and talk to me about my heritage because they believed I had an identity problem. And that was because I always used to make comments about, why am I being treated like this? Is it because I'm black? Da, 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 da. They thought that it was...
So you were the problem.
I was the problem.
Your blackness was the problem.
Yeah, and you know what? It's only like when I get to this point now in my life, and I even was chatting to my friend when I saw him a couple of days ago, and I said to him, if this whole BLM movement was going on when we were at school, my treatment probably would have been so different. They probably would have rolled the red carpet out for me. You know, I'm not in a funny way, but like literally the treatment probably would have been so different in terms of the way that I got treated, that I probably would have been able to convey my points and change perceptions in a better way than, you don't match the box we fit in, so therefore we're going to sort of have this knee-jerk reaction of sticking you in the corner.
How did it make you feel that it's because it sounds to me like the school thought you were the problem.
Oh,
you had to conform to what they believed was the right way or whatever, and so they've brought this person in to help with your quote-unquote identity. How did that make you feel? How old were you? How did that make you feel?
I was like 13, 14 at the time here.
Which you already, like, when you're 13, 14, you still have no idea what's going on. Like, you have no idea. So for that person to come in and say you're wrong in all the things that you're thinking and doing, like, what?
Do you know, it was difficult because at the time, I didn't know why this woman was here. I didn't know what the hell her point was or what. And it wasn't a case, it was like a therapy session where she sat down. She was just educating me on shit. I'm like, what the fuck's this? Like, what do I need this for? You know, how come this isn't being a lesson? Why am I being taken out of my existing lessons and spending 90 minutes?
The only one who's...
Yeah, exactly. I was the only one in the whole school that had this. The only one. This woman was coming in from local authority or like a private thing that the school had paid for to come in like every 2 weeks and have these conversations with me. And like my mother didn't get saying it. No one got saying it. It just happened. And I, at the time, didn't realize what was going on. It was only once I got older and I looked back at it and I realized that this was the thing. And I remember having conversations with the lady that came in, and she was like, I don't really understand like why you need this or like what the problem is. And I didn't know. So we just used to like sit and chat about like music and art and stuff. Like it ended up just becoming like chatting to a mate by the end of it. But at the same time, obviously she was there and she was getting paid for this thing that she was being paid to supply. It's like, why are you being paid to supply to try and educate someone on this kind of thing? So that was probably one of the biggest things. And then once I got older, and especially recently with like the events of the last 18 months or whatever, it really does make you think, because you start thinking, oh my God, is this how it's always going to be, in a sense that like if you don't conform with a box or something, you're a problem, and therefore there needs to be some sort of a solution to change your way of thinking. I was just challenging what was happening because I didn't believe it to be the right way. That was it at the end of the day. It's like, if something happens and you don't like it and you question it, do they need to then bring in some sort of a different resolution to try and handle you and your way of thinking, as opposed to addressing why you may think that and what they can do to then no. So that was it. And I think that's probably, looking back on it, one of the things which I don't know if they do it anymore, but that was definitely quite a fucked up thing for me to have as a kid.
You but you spent much of your kind of schooling years in Cambridge. You would have been, I imagine, one of the only people who were not white.
Oh, definitely.
In that area.
100%.
So how has that impacted your life?
Do you know what?
Because I can't relate, right? I'm white middle class female.
This is the thing. I grew up in an all white neighborhood. Literally, even when I'm there now, walking around the village where we live, I'm like the only one of color. And I think that one of the things is, I think people sort of almost, when they first look at you, they double take, because they're like, what? A brownie here? They can't believe it. But then at the same time, I think because of the way that I carry myself and all the rest of it, by being around these people for so long, it's probably done me good. And I think I say that because I then know how to handle myself, carry myself, behave, act, speak around different groups of people. And that was an experience that, you probably, of course, as multicultural as London is, I think that being somewhere like that, where you're this minority, it helps you to figure out how you're going to go into this world and make it so that people are looking at you in the right way, and to almost make it so that you don't have to stand up in order to be seen. People were paying attention to what I was saying and the way that I was behaving before they even sort of realized, my whole thing was, I want you to realize and pay attention to what I'm saying and all the rest of it before you even realize I'm black. And to be fair, the impact that it then had, which pisses me off now, is that, so I have a black mum with an entire half of the family that is black. And then I have a white dad, yeah? But somewhere along the line, I'll come out looking a little bit more Indian than black. So the problem I have, I look like this, which means that a lot of people who are black will tell me, and my friends too, I'm not black. Then white people will be like, well, you're not white. So then I'm like, well, where do I fit in the middle? Because none of you seem to want me. And then you've got, people who are black telling you, oh, you must be Indian. White people telling you, oh, you must be. And it's almost like at that point, then you're like, hang on a second, well, I know what I am. And as a matter of fact, let's just fuck all of that and pay attention to what I'm saying and the person I am. And actually pay attention to that instead of this preconceived notion of he's come through the room, he's black, therefore he's going to talk like this, act like this, probably, do something stupid or whatever. Let's just not pay attention and write him off. That's sort of the mountain that you've got to climb as you navigate your way around life when you look a bit different. And obviously, I think I come from a place of privilege, definitely. And I do have it very easy in comparison to some of my darker counterparts and friends. I've never been stop and searched. I've never been pulled over. I've never had any unpleasant interactions with the police ever in my life. That comes from a place of privilege, to be able to sit here and say that. And that's something which a lot of people don't have the ability to put their hand on their heart and say, because it's an everyday occurrence. Some days I want to dress smart and I'll put on a suit and I'll look good. And other days I want to put on sweats. But the thing is, I can consciously do both and not have to worry about when I step out of a car or when I go here or go there, what response I'm going to get from the police. And that's an interesting thing.
The fact that you even have to say that is like crazy to me. And again, like I'm white middle class, so I can't relate. But obviously my children are mixed race. My ex-husband is black. Like, so I have a little bit of an, let's shall we say, appreciation rather than an understanding of what it must be like not being white in the UK. And I remember him vividly saying to me, like, if I'm walking up the street and I'm wearing a hoodie, because, you know, he's balding, his hair's going, he wears his hood up all the time. He was like, I'll take my hood, if there's people coming the other way and they're white, I'll take my hood down and smile at them because I want them to feel comfortable. Or if I'm in my car, because we've had lots of nice cars, we've had Maseratis and Range Rovers and all the things. If there's a police coming past, I'll sit up and like, you know, like he actively changes his behavior to make other people
100%
feel comfortable. Do you feel like you have to do that?
100%. I remember I was with a friend of mine, and this was a little while ago, and he got pulled over for speeding by an officer. And do you know what the first thing the officer turned around? He was black, and obviously I'm like this. And I was dressed casually, and I had a hoodie on and the rest of it. He pulled us over. Yes, my friend was, you know, speeding. But the first thing he said to us, "You're very well spoken." That was the first thing he said. After he'd taken the names and done all that was the first thing he said to us. "You're very well spoken."
Wow. How'd that make you feel?
Like, at the time when it happened, it took me a while, a couple of hours to process that interaction that had happened. Because I was like, hang on a second. You fucked up. But moreover than that, we've just been complimented by the fact that we're well spoken.
You don't fit the stereotype.
So it's like, oh, you don't fit the stereotype. Like, yeah, we're driving around in a nice car and all the rest of it. It's like, you're driving around in a nice car. And he said it was like, oh, you guys are dressed well, you're well spoken. And I thought, why does that even need to be said?
You said something interesting earlier before we started recording. You said you were in Harrods recently and someone said, oh, are you an influencer?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing, right? You're young.
That's it.
You're not white. You're black. People assume that you must be
100%
an influencer or whatever. How have you got this money? How can you afford this thing? How have you got this car?
You know what the thing is? I think because, and there's a real problem, and I might get cancelled for saying this, so there might need to be something that comes up on the screen for this. But in the society of black people, I still feel as though there's a real sense of still kind of almost being like your one foot is out of the shackles, but still one is kind of kept in. And the reason I say that is because we're still slaves in a way to consumerism and different things like that, in a way that it's like, okay, we want to buy nice things, but we're still giving our money back to these people instead of claiming ownership and taking, and people are not wanting to like build their own things and own land and take ownership of their own things. They want to, okay, you know, I've got some money now, I'm going to go and spend it on clothes and this and that. And it's like, then you end up in a situation where there's so many people, especially within the black community, who get money, whether it be footballers, rappers, whatever it might be. They make a lot of money. Even businessmen that are black, they'll make a lot of money. And the first thing that they want to do is change their image by buying all of this materialistic stuff. And one thing that I even read it this morning, is like, you can't, and this is a thing that plays in my mind a lot, is you can't take it with you when you die. So it's like, why spend all this money to look a certain way? And of course, don't get me wrong, I'm someone who really takes pride in the way that I dress and my appearance and the clothes I wear, 100%. But there's still this problem within the community that is, you need to dress a certain way in order to be appreciated. And so therefore this mindset of, I need to show everyone how wealthy I am by buying all these clothes, all this money I've made, then giving it, like, you're still kind of in this mindset of having one foot in. Like, why are these rappers needing to show off all the jewelry and the chains and the watches and everything? Like, you don't see our white counterparts doing that, you know? Some do, of course, but for the most part, it's a very like, oh, I'm going to go Hatton Garden and get a bus down and do this. I'm going to show this off on the gram. Why? Like, it doesn't prove anything. Okay.
Why do you think there is that culture?
I think that culture exists because for so long, so many people, especially when they haven't come from something, they don't necessarily understand how to then function when they suddenly get a lot of something. And this is something which I think needs to be sort of taught more, not just for Black people, but for all people, especially when you're growing up. You don't learn about mortgages. You don't learn about credit. You don't learn about sort of financial security. You don't learn how to look after yourself. And all of these kind of life lessons, you sort of, okay, well done. Here's your grades. Go and figure life out for yourself. What? You're 18. This is the thing. You're 18, yeah? Then you can apply for credit all of a sudden overnight, the second you turn 18. The second you turn 18, you can apply for credit.
And no one tells you it's a loan as opposed to free money. No one,
like people look at people.
And a very expensive loan.
And that's the thing. No one at the age of 18 will understand what the fuck APR is. What the hell all of these different numbers and things like that. A credit report. How it works. Good credit, bad credit. They don't teach you this. You have to consciously, if you want to understand this, figure it out for yourself. And if you're a business person or you're in business, then you need to understand that tenfold. So again, it's like all of these things aren't taught to you. Oh, you want a mortgage, or you got to suddenly do all this research of mortgage rates and lenders and brokers and lawyers. And, oh, you want to buy this house and contracts. And hang on a second. Where's this learning? Where's this education? You don't get that. And I think that's a real problem as well, because that mentality of you leave school, and even I've seen it with friends of mine who become incredibly, or are from incredibly wealthy families where, you know, the parents have done extremely well. We're talking billionaires. You get 18, you got trust. Trust gives you a little bit of money. Then you turn 21, you get even more money. By the time they're 30 probably, then they've got it all. And it's like, if they haven't been taught or conditioned, because I've seen it in many different cases, some that it goes very well for, and others that sort of just lose their shit and go off the rails because they don't know what to do all of a sudden with this. And I think that's where the education needs to come down to it. Not from parents, of course from parents, but mostly from schooling. You know, you spend so much of your life in education, but yet when you leave, there's still so much for you to learn, to apply in the real world. So I think when it comes down to Black people in the Black community, when it comes to, oh, I want to spend all my money on this to look a certain way of this, that whole problem comes from needing to feel like you are proving yourself. Again, it comes back to that point, to other people, and doing so in a way that makes you feel like you've then got the validation. Look at me, I've got money. Exactly. I'm finally there. Whereas one of the things which you notice is that,
which lasts about 7 seconds.
7 seconds, and then you're on to the next thing. And that happened to me quite recently, where I started realizing, because I think all of my friends will turn around and say, yeah, he's obsessed with buying clothes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can definitely agree to that. Anyone that looks at Zac's Instagram will know that he is a regular in the Harrods shoe department.
I listen, like, I love to buy. Like, I take pride in my appearance. That's the first, like, but I'm not doing it because I want to look nice for other people. I'm doing it because I like to.
Intrinsic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing for me growing up is always from a young age, I always used to be someone who really took a keen interest in fashion and the way that people dressed and expressing yourself through the way that you dress and all of those kind of things. And people kind of, for a while, they thought I was gay, because they were like, what the hell? What's this Black guy who's obsessed with clothes and cuts and fabric? What the hell's this? Like, it didn't make sense to a lot of them for a while. Then I look at them now and I'm like, hang on, like, that's the first thing you do. At least for me, I'll scan people before I've even had a conversation with you. I'm looking at you and I'm like, okay, you look nice. You smell nice. Bam. Okay. Then I'll listen to what you, which it's stupid to do, but I do it. It's just
take care of yourself.
Of course. And I feel like a lot of other people do it as well. And that's one of the things which you realize in life, is that if you are in a situation whereby you're dressed in a certain way, people will then sort of pick up and they're like, oh, he dresses a bit different, but he obviously takes care of his appearance. And so many people, I was at an event like 2 weeks ago and I had on like a custom suit. And the first thing the guy said to me, even before I opened up my mouth, he was like, wow, your suit's amazing. I've even had it when I was walking down the street and people have said to me, oh, I love your shoes. Obviously it gives you like a nice like buzz, but I'm just like, obviously I'm doing something right for these people to actually love the way that I'm dressing, but I'm just doing it for myself. Like I very rarely will post like, this is my outfit today on Instagram or stuff like that, because it's just not something which, and so many people want me to do like a closet tour and I've got this, I've got that. But then again, it's like, I think seeing it from my friends who are extremely wealthy and the mentality they've got where it's like, you've got this, but you don't want people to know you've got this. I think that's, when I was younger, definitely I wanted to be more flash and show and flamboyant and all the rest of it. But now as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize like I want to be a bit more quiet with it and sort of a bit more reserved. And I've even sort of had thoughts of like, oh, do I want to like delete my Instagram and start another one and be like really private and small? And, you know, because that's the thing, like it gets scary when you post something on Instagram and you've got like 7,000 people watching. You're like, I don't know who all you people are. You know, that's one of the things. It's like all of you users are following me, but I don't know who the hell you are. You're taking this interest in what I'm doing in my life, but I don't know anything about you. It's quite a weird thing, but I guess that's part and parcel of sort of what we do at the end of the day.
That brings me really nice on to talking about brand.
Yes.
Zac Des. You've got, 13,000 followers on Instagram. You've got a really successful podcast. It's just finished series 2.
Yes.
Why? Because obviously I have invested in like what I get that other question all the time. Everyone's like, you've got 70,000 followers on LinkedIn. Why did you do this? And I'm like, I know why I did it. Where did you see the value? And did you consciously decide to build a personal brand when you did the podcast, when you started posting all your stuff on Instagram, or was it just a very organic thing?
Do you know what? It happened by accident, purely by accident. And I'll be honest about that. And the thing is, I will put my hand up and I'll probably be one of the first people to say that I was in the right place at the right time. 100%. I jumped on the Instagram wave before the influencers when there was a lot of money still in it, where you could DM people with 1 million followers and they probably would reply. I was like, not an OG, but close enough to it. And what ended up happening was, because of the trajectory that I then realized I wanted to go on and the value in what I realized I had with the photography that I was doing, it then became an interesting way of using Instagram as a portfolio. So back then, and it's still going today, there's a guy called Dave Burt and he runs the At London social media platform. And he used to have an agency called Be Social Global. And his agency had like, I just remember the sickest campaigns they used to do for like Nike and Canon and all these big companies. And I looked at it and I was like, this is the kind of trajectory I want to go on. And one of the interesting things that he did was that he made the account. Then I remember Jamie Oliver saw what he was doing. He did something with Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver shared it and then bam, that was the account then like pushed into the limelight. And I used to take these pictures of London and all these different things, like snaps on the phone, on the camera, whatever. I'd send them to Dave and Dave would post them on the Instagram. And this is when that account probably had like 1.5 million followers. And the interactions were wicked. You'd do a post and you'd get like 200 followers off the back of it, 300. Like it was nuts back then what would happen. And for about a year, I'd just send him pictures and then he'd just post them. So I ended up building up this network of people who followed me, and ended up building this network of really nice images that people then wanted emulated in terms of putting them in the shots or commission those shots for them to have in their houses and that kind of thing. That portfolio that I then had put me in a very unique situation where I was then able to approach a lot of celebrities and say to them, I want to start doing more lifestyle content. Back then, no one was taking pictures. No one. And this is a case of like, this is before...
So selfies and filters.
This is exactly it. So footballers weren't posting pictures of them hopping out of the car or like of them doing anything besides it was just them playing football. I then sort of noticed that and jumped on that early. So I then was hitting up footballers, musicians, entertainers, TV personalities, anyone that had some sort of a following that people recognize and knew in real life. I was then jumping on them. And I said to a lot of them in the beginning, right, this is going to be one hell of a ride. But if you have your image in the right way, this is going to be sick. And at the time, the first kind of group of people that I was working with, they were all on Made in Chelsea. And this was before they then had personal brands and other business. Well, a couple of them had businesses outside of what they were doing. I just used to follow them around when they used to do the club appearances, when they used to do shooting days, and all of that kind of thing. And I just used to take pictures for them that they would then post on their Instagram alongside stuff of the show and stuff like that. So it was a case, any lifestyle stuff that they were posting, I was taking for them. And they were candid pictures, like they didn't look like they were set up or staged or things like that, but it would literally be a case I just had my camera and would follow them around 4 days and do that. Off the back of one of them, he then ended up going and doing like fashion week events and stuff like that, attending those. I then saw that as a byproduct of like a leeway onto then using these other people to do what I did. So then I started being approached by the models, fashion companies and all that kind of thing. Then got introduced to like footballers. This is before they then sort of had their big break in the Premier League and ended up playing for England and that kind of thing. And even some of them that have now retired and things like that. They then had like other projects and brands that they wanted to set up. And this is then when I sort of like the light bulb went off. They then wanted these brands created. So then I realized, I've been following you for this long. I've got all these pictures, all this content. Why don't I manage these brands for you? And we do this as a together thing. And then obviously going back to what Dave did with the Be Social Global and the way that he operated and having the Instagram and the agency and the clients. So that was literally the same thing that the light bulb went off for me. And I realized that was what we were going to go and do. So we did it. And it was really successful. And I think that then it just sort of happened by chance, because it was like, if the Made in Chelsea stars weren't at that point that they're now at, if it was back then where they engaged and interacted and, it was more organic, that was probably my best shot. And that window of sort of, it was only like 5-6 months that you ultimately had before it then started to blow up. And then like, Sensodyne or whoever it was that was working with them at the time, I think it was like L'Oreal or Rimmel London or one of them ones, that then was like, okay, we're doing product placement with you and that was when it changed the landscape completely, because they were jumping in and going directly to them.
This is like pre-influencer. You were basically the content creator for the content 100%. Creators.
Yeah, like they just lived their life. I just followed them along. And the beauty of it was that I wasn't even like there. They didn't realize I was there. I was in the corner of the rooms. I was like, pictures were being taken. You didn't even realize, which meant that a lot of these images that came out just looked sick. But obviously now people have got to the point where it's like, I can set the phone up in the corner with the ring flash or whatever. Bam, 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 like 10 pictures, I'm good. That was one of the interesting things, because then it was a turning point. And again, one of the interesting points with that was then realizing a lot of these people had this short window of opportunity. They were then going to go into other things. So I needed to be able to move with them and to transfer my skills with them too. So it all happened in a very short space of time, but it was organic. And that was the beautiful thing about it. So it was like, I didn't have to pay anyone for anything. It just came about. Through them, I then ended up doing pieces in magazines, doing magazine shoots. Then the London nightlife hit me and we were going out and I was taking pictures for the clubs. I was in the clubs like 3 times a week, sometimes doing pictures for the clubs. Pictures for events companies. There was a dating company that I used to work with and we do the stuff for them when they had it. Like, it just took off completely. Like, wow, it was next level. And then obviously you can imagine you're in these high-end clubs meeting these people, you're then connecting with them, they've then got their other stuff going on, so I'm then working with them. That was how it, so then it just built this incredible contact list of people who have pretty much stayed with me for like the past 7-8 years or whatever it's been. But that was the key foundation and building block in making this whole thing happen.
I can totally relate to that. Like my agency was so organic. Like it was a case of like I was building my personal brand around being a recruitment marketeer and putting out all the tips about that. And then all of a sudden had 12,000 followers and people were like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, instead of me just replying to the DMs about how I did this, I'll just start telling people as posts because I can't be asked to message back 100 people, just fucking share it online. Yeah. So, and then that kind of pivoted my entire brand to be about, not about recruitment marketing, but to be about personal branding.
Yes.
So I went from having 12,000 followers to 70,000 followers in like 20 months, I think I've done it. So, which it sounds like a long time for people, but if you've ever tried to grow on social media, you know that's pretty strong.
Especially now.
Yeah, all organic. I've never paid for a single post ever. No sponsored, nothing. Everything is organic. But I do think that like some of the best businesses, period, are that way. They are businesses that solve problems that either the founder has or the other people around the founder has. And you're like, hang on a minute, like I can do that for you. I can help you with that thing.
Yeah.
So like, what was that light bulb moment for you? Like you've mentioned kind of that moment a few times. So like, what was the moment you were like, this is no longer, without being like disrespectful, this is no longer just photography. This is actually brand building. Because that's what your business, we'll get onto your exit in a minute, but like that's what your business now does, is build brands.
I think the real light bulb moment was when I kind of saw, Tyrone Mings, who's someone who's a good friend, and I've done a lot of stuff with him in the past. And he supported me from the very beginning. And it's crazy now that I see him like playing for England and all the rest of it, because it was like, I remember him when he was at Bournemouth, and I remember meeting him. And one of the funniest things was I met him. And I think one of the reasons that we worked so well and like that interaction was completely organic was because it was after a Fashion Week event. We then went to the Ship in Wandsworth, and he was there with a couple of his mates. And it was a really nice day. It's a fantastic place. Honestly, I owe a lot to the Ship. And we pulled up there. Oh my God, it's fantastic. It was like the best.
Outside by the river.
The food's fantastic. The Ship, if you want to sponsor me, honestly, you know where I am. Because I owe a lot to that place. The roasts are fantastic as well on a Sunday. And we pulled up there. We had it was like the big body S-Class with a chauffeur, like me and 3 friends who'd just been to Fashion Week, done this whole day. We pulled up, and one of my friends knew him. So then we all sat together and we were eating. And I was there, and I've actually still got the pictures. I took these incredible pictures of him on my iPhone because I didn't want to get my camera out. And he sat there, and we didn't speak, but I just kept seeing all these people coming over and taking pictures of him. And I didn't know who the hell he was, because at the time he was playing for Bournemouth, but he wasn't playing because he had his injury. So he was well known, but at the time I think he only had 20, maybe 30,000 followers back then. So then I turned around to him, and this is one of the most embarrassing things I ever said. I said to him, "Are you a rugby player or something?" And he looked at me and he just laughed. And obviously, looking back at it, there's no way that a guy that's 6'3" and that slim could ever be a rugby player. But I think he just found it funny in the way that it's this guy has no idea who I am, and he's just chatting to me like a normal person. When all these people are coming up and taking pictures, then afterwards, I sent the pictures to him over DM. He followed me. I followed him back. Or maybe I can't remember which way it went. And then he said to me, "Oh, I've got this academy that I'm starting. And it's really successful now. It's all over the country. It gives young people the opportunity to learn to play football with registered coaches and all the rest of it." So then I remember I hit him and I said, "Look, let's make this happen." I went down to Bath for 2 days. I spent 2 days with him. And it was then when I kind of realized this guy's the shit. People around there just loved him. Everyone knew him. He was so humble and low key. And I realized that what he was building was such a big deal. And that was when I sort of realized, I was this guy's a footballer, but he's also got this academy. And then he also has his KTM Design, which is his architect company as well, interior design. And I thought, this guy has one face, but he's also got many different faces as well behind him. I need to emulate that with what I've got. And I had a conversation with him. And then at that point, I was like, "Do you know what? Let me release the book." And I released the book with all the body of work that I'd done prior to that. I then put it all together. And that went out, I think, in 2017, I want to say we put that out. That was just after I'd done a really successful series of events with Apple as well, which was nuts. When that happened, we then sort of saw that there was an opportunity to do so much more than just take pictures. There was so much that I wasn't tapping into. So it was loads of conversations that I was having with people, what they thought, how they saw it working. Again, at that point, everyone else is now suddenly starting to jump on a trend of influencers and personal brands and content creators and all this. I then realized, okay, I need to do something else, to do something more. And then that was essentially when it was born. And then from there onwards, I sort of haven't really looked back. It's just grown and grown. I've worked with incredible companies, met some incredible people, met sort of everyone who I ever wanted to, people who I've idolized, and even people who I've watched on TV as a kid growing up. Having then met them and then worked with them is nuts. That it's absolutely nuts. Tiny Temper for a lot of us is a flipping an icon. And I've worked with him so many times, and he's a guy who I really rate and love. And never in a million years would I have ever imagined being in a position where he's putting together this brand, what we wear, and I'm helping with that. Or meeting flipping Ainsley Harriott and growing up and watching him on TV with Ready Steady Cook, or another example I can give is with Hugh Edwards that reads the 10 o'clock news, who's like become a great friend of mine. Like, what the hell? Do you know what I mean? It's like you suddenly realize all these people, it's like, I grew up watching you, or you being sort of like a face of my childhood, and now like we're in the same room. It's nuts.
Do you think entrepreneurs taken, like, I guess context, I believe entrepreneurs, you have to be highly ambitious. You cannot be an entrepreneur and not be highly ambitious. And when I say highly ambitious, I don't mean money driven or whatever. You've got to want to achieve something. Yeah. And then when you achieve that thing, be like, right, what's the next? Like, it's that insatiable desire to just constantly be at goals. Have you, I also think because of that, you never stand still and go, fuck, look what I did. Do
you know what?
It sounds like you've just had that moment.
That's the thing. So only very recently have I turned around and started to look at what I've done and actually deep and take into consideration what actually has happened.
Because by the way, you're how old? 25?
Yeah.
And what you've achieved in those 25 years is what most people would achieve not most people would achieve in their lifetime.
Do you know what it is? When you look back at the years and everything that's happened and the roads that you go down and the stuff that you want to achieve, never in a million years you actually materialize it. You just think it's like a dream. Okay, it's far away. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I know I want to get there. One way or another, it for a lot of people, it just happens. And for me, I think it was a case I just got very lucky and it happened. You have to be so driven to the point where you realize that this, like you say, so many people message me now. I want to be successful. What do you mean by that? Oh, I want to make a lot of money. Well, if that's your goal,
then you're fucked.
You're fucked. Because the thing is, and hand on heart, I can say this. If you don't think about money at all, not give it any consideration, of course, there's a place of privilege where I'm saying this from. But if you do not take that into consideration with what you want to do at all, it will come to you as a byproduct of hard work.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
That is the most important thing which people misinterpret. They look at people who have done things that are very successful. Number one thing I see people do, oh, he's worth this much. Oh, his net worth's this. Let me just get one thing straight. Your net worth doesn't mean you got that in the bank at all. Because I've got friends online that says they're worth this much and I know they haven't got that in their bank because they still want to split the bill when we go for dinner. But that's the thing. When you get to a point where you're suddenly having to focus yourself on what do I want to do and what direction do I want to go in, it has to be about what you want to achieve. And that achievement comes from doing something that you're actually passionate about. And that passion is something which is such a raw and unique feeling, can't be emulated, and I can't describe it, and you can't bestow it on anyone as well. You have to find it in yourself, and you got to have it. You just want to be like, I want to get. It's like you say, you just want to rip the quilt off you, jump out of bed in the morning, and right, what's the first thing I'm doing? You're driven. People like back in the day, people don't know this. I used to get up at like 5 a.m. I did, and I used to go to bed at midnight. I slept 5 hours.
Because you were so pumped.
That was it. I was so...
I can relate to that.
Don't get me... It fucked me because you can't do that forever.
But you were so high on what you were trying to achieve.
100%.
That, yeah, I'm the same. I'm so... And my mum, bless her, like, she's always like, stop working so hard. Like, you're going to make yourself sick, whatever. Because I get up at the same, like kind of like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I do work before I come in. I go to the gym. And then when I come home at night, once my kids are sorted, I'm back working again. And I'm not doing it because I'm late on stuff or like I've got deadlines. Whatever. I'm doing it because I want to.
That's it.
Like I don't want to watch Netflix. I don't want to watch, like I watch Squid Games, but I don't want to watch Squid Games or whatever. I want to work on my business because that's the thing that makes me really happy. And actually, I'm going to get fucking slated for saying this. I actually think salaries and payments or in whatever capacity you get them in your life is actually a distraction from finding your purpose. Because
definitely.
We are taught to aspire to, 70 grand a year or 100 grand a year, whatever, as the goal. But actually money isn't a goal. It's a resource to achieve our goals. So for me, 100%, you said something there which really hit a nerve, which was the minute you stop worrying, and 100% I appreciate this is from a place of privilege. I get it. And I know there's a lot of people that aren't in this same place. But for me, when I stopped worrying about money, because I've got 2 kids, like it's that whole thing of I know how to make sure they're provided for, my mortgage is paid, all those things. And you can relate when you're starting a business, like everything is fucking tight. Like you 100%. Are like not anymore, guys. I've got some of my team in the room. But I know that at the beginning I was like, fuck, am I going to make payroll this month? No, it's one of those things. But the minute I stopped worrying about the money is when all of a sudden we did record month. Yeah. Our year end this year is going to be 150 grand more than we thought it was going to be. And we made a pretty aggressive projection on that.
And that's how it has to be.
Has to be. And so for me, it's like money's a distraction.
Of course. You get money and the first thing you want to do, and it was the case for me when I started making a large amount, and I remember this, I was thinking to I almost felt guilty. I did. I felt so guilty because in my head, I started thinking, what's the quickest way or the best way for me to spend this?
Oh my God, burn whole. Like literally the minute you get it in your account, you're like, right, what can I buy now?
I remember looking at it and I just thought
And that feeling lasts 7 seconds.
Of course.
And then it's gone.
And then you're chasing the next
fuck.
thing.
Yeah. And 100%. It's like clothes, bags, shoes, all those things just sitting in my closet.
I got to a point when I used to look at it, and now at the point where I actually don't like checking any accounts or any of that kind of thing, because it just gives me that anxiety of not worrying about how much is in there, but you start walking around and you're like, I can buy that, I can buy that, I can buy that, I can do that, I can do that. Everything that pops up all of a sudden, all these adverts that you get targeted with, you're like, right, I can do this, I can do this, I can do everything.
But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
And that's the thing. And it's also about then your longevity of deciding, okay, if I spend this now or if I do this now, what's the implication that this is necessarily going to have in the future? And being responsible as well. As you get older, you realize that you can't necessarily be. I used to remember it so well when we go clubbing or we go out, and there'd just be nights when we got a table here, this guy's got a table over there, his champagne sparklers are coming, I'm looking over.
I want champagne sparklers.
And then we're just like, do you know what? Fuck it, let's do it. He's doing it. Then he's doing it. Then we're doing it. Then and the only one that wins in that situation is the club. We're not winning. Remember, one of my friends did it. He was down 70 grand in one night. I swear to God. 70 grand just like that. Done. On champagne.
That he probably didn't drink.
And the funny thing is he was Muslim. Yeah. So he didn't even drink. But he just did it because he wanted to, he wanted to do the flex. But it's like, fuck me. I'm looking around. I'm seeing all this champagne. And yeah, I was drinking back then. But no one's drinking to that capacity. It's like 10 of us on a table.
Most obnoxious thing you've ever bought?
Most obnoxious thing I've ever bought? Oh my goodness, there's so many.
What's the one thing you look back on and think, why the hell did I buy that?
Do you know what? The number one thing I remember was when I went and I spent an obscene amount of money on Off-White. That was, do you know what? And I'll tell you why. Because so much of that shit, I spent a lot of money on it. And I'll tell you something now. My brother and my mother still to this day tease me about the fact I spent that amount of money on t-shirts and flipping shoes and shit. And I only used to wear it once or twice. I remember I went to, I had an in-between day where it was I had something in the afternoon, something in the morning, and then nothing for 3 hours. Went to Harvey Nichols. And this is when it got bad, because every single fucking person that worked in the menswear department at Harvey Nichols knew my name. They all knew me, and they used to text me when they got new season coming in and all the rest of it. I used to go there, get shown one t-shirt, then get shown another t-shirt, and instead of just being like, okay, I was like, oh fucking hell, I'm taking them all.
Do you think that comes back to what you were saying earlier about having a point to prove?
Yeah, definitely. Because I used to want to be going out and busting that and shit, but it was I'm only fucking wearing this once. What the hell am I doing? I'm more responsible now, of course. Don't get me wrong. I still spend a lot of money on clothes. I do. But granted, I've realised the economic value in it and cost per wear of items and, ROI. Exactly. I'm like, okay, if I spend this much on this, how many times am I going to wear it? And now my wardrobe is so... Don't get me wrong, it's big. There's a lot of stuff. I've even thought, oh my God, I need to make a closet, another room, or find somewhere else, storage or something to put more stuff in, because the problem is I've got so many shoes. I do. A lot of shoes. I love my shoes. I love clothes. But every single item that I have bought now, probably started doing this maybe last year. I did like a whole revamp of my wardrobe, like maybe, I think it was just before the pandemic, maybe January, February last year. And I cleared out so many things that I wore, but I didn't like. And now a lot of my stuff is like, it's expensive stuff, but it's basics that I can wear that pair with, like everything pairs with something or goes with this or goes with that. And I love that now because it's like...
Do you love it though? Does it make you happy?
It doesn't make me happy because I can't, like, this is the thing, you can't take it with you when you die. We're all going to die. And that death scares the shit out of me. And I think that's probably because I'm still young. I don't know. Because I can't comprehend this idea of like things just stopping or coming to an end. And I think that probably comes from the idea of still having more to prove to yourself or more that you want to do. And I think once I get to a point where I'm like, then it probably won't bother me. But I don't know.
You're never going to get to that point.
Oh, this took a dark turn.
No, like you're never going to get to the point. No, like genuinely, you're never going to get to the point where you think I've done it. You won't.
You know what?
So I know, like, I'm not to be like preachy, but I feel so strongly about this. Like, so many people are in the same position as you. They worry about the future so much. And the most powerful thing I've ever done is start just living for now. So my mantra now is like, do it for the plot, not for the ending.
Yeah.
Like, I am do it for the plot. Say yes to everything. Doesn't work out, YOLO. Yeah. There is very little that you can do that will fuck up your life.
Do you know what? I came to that.
Aside from killing someone, which I don't.
That's one thing. Yes, 100%. We'll put the big thing up on the screen.
Don't do any criminal activity. Aside from that, you should be good.
That's it. Be a hustler, but a hustler above board. I think that the thing with life, especially for me now, is I just realized, like, if I want to I just want to do everything that I possibly could fucking ever do, because I don't want to look back with regret when I'm older and be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. I remember my mother when she was younger, and she still goes on about this now, and she's like, I wanted to have a sweet shop when I was younger. I said, so why do you want a sweet shop? And, like, she didn't want it because she wanted to sell sweets. She wanted it because she wanted to flipping, like, go and eat the sweets. And I was like, but granted, if you want to do that and your business fails, then so be it. If you never want to open and you just want it as your personal shop, fine. But then it's like, oh, I couldn't do it because I had this, and then I had kids and da-da-da-da, and blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, I've ended up in this position and whatever. That's the thing. I think a lot of us, we have dreams or ambitions or things that we want to do, and we're too scared to do them because we worry about the implication that it might have or if it doesn't work. And I think that it's better for you to try and quit and to consciously make that decision than for you to live all the time with that sense of regret. And that's a big thing that I'm a big believer of. I think that regret probably scares me more than death and everything else in life. That feeling of, oh my God, what happens if I didn't do it, or like, oh, I missed my opportunity to do that. Because people now, I've realized, care so much about appearance and image, not for themselves, but the way that it looks on other people, that they're scared of living their true life or being their true self because they worry about the implications that it's going to have. And one example that I have about this, there's a married couple who I know. They're not in love. They got kids. They're together for the sake of the kids. I understand that. But every single time when my friend speaks to her, she's like, I just want to leave him. I just want to do that, but I can't because of this and this and this and this. And obviously there's a lot more to the situation. But in my mind, I'm like, you're not like, no one's happy in this situation. The kids are going to see you're not happy in this situation. Just go. Like, obviously there's probably more to the story than that. But you just have to go and just do you. Because if you don't, then you're like, shit, I've wasted all this time. I can't get my hot girl summer on. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. You start realizing, like, if I delay for the sake of myself or for the sake of worrying about X or Y, the consequence of waiting is far greater than if you were to just take that risk or to just do that thing. Because it's like, why do you want to live in that moment of, oh, I should have done this, I didn't, and now I'm here?
Do you have any regrets?
Many regrets. I think one of my biggest regrets is that there's a lot of people who I didn't make time for who are no longer with us. I think that was a big thing. I selfishly cared too much about trying to build something for too long that I missed out on a lot of things happening. I think there's a lot of things that I said in the past to people when I used to have my big drinking problem. And I think that then... And now, it's funny because my perception is completely different. It's like now when I see people drunk and they say things to people, I see it as like that's their true feelings coming out. And for me, it was like I'd drink and I'd say things and I'd be like, no, but I don't think that. And I think that there's a lot of people who I hurt then who haven't forgiven me still for actions and things I've said. Don't get me wrong, I never hurt anyone physically. I never did anything that was violent or abusive, but there was definitely things which I said or actions that ways that I carried myself, which I know offended people and hurt people. And I think that when said people are in a comfortable position where they can turn around and be in themselves happy to have that conversation or to be forgiving, or, you know, they want to talk or whatever, then 100%. Because there's some people you still owe apologies to in your life, of course. But it's about whether or not the opportunity to apologize presents itself to you. So that's probably one of my biggest regrets, is that there's unspoken apologies which definitely need to be had. And it took me time to realize wrongdoings as well. And I think my biggest regret is probably not realizing that my drinking problem was having that much of an implication on others, because I was being so selfishly wrapped up in myself. I didn't realize the implication it was having. Friends, family, your parents, your business. Like, so many people suffered as a result. So that's probably the biggest one, I think.
What was the moment that you realized you had a problem with alcohol, or an unhealthy relationship with alcohol?
Do you know what I think it was? I think it was when business was going well, but then I started to lose myself because I got so caught up in everything and anything that was also going on. And then what ended up happening was I got to this point where I was just drinking like obscene, unhealthy amounts daily. I was waking up, it's like fucking 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm turning to the whiskey and whatnot. That's not normal. And it was only when I got to a point then when I started heavily drinking, and mentally I started having like voices and shit that would talk to me. And I'm thinking, this isn't normal to be having this kind of, behavior and antics that are going on. And I think when it got really bad was when like friends and people around me started to really fear that I was going to take my life or go down a really dark path in that respect. And I remember it vividly. I was at my friend's house. I was completely drunk and they didn't want to let me go home because they were worried of the implications of what I might do. And for a friend to be in that position where they're so worried that that obviously means that you're in a bad place for them to be in that situation. So I remembered one of them slept in front of the door so that I couldn't get out. Another one of them slept in front of the door that I was sleeping in. And then I remember in the morning, then the ambulance come and I started having like these like irregular heartbeats and stuff like that. And I started getting like really bad paranoia and all the rest of it. And I like went to the hospital. I then went for therapy and counselling and met with all these people. And that was then the big wake up call. And obviously I think the other thing was then my mother, who then came down on the train, like dropped everything. She had a busy day and she had work to do. And she dropped everything and came. That was, at that point, I think I realised that was like, okay, something needs to change here.
What do you think was do you think you've always had that in you, or was there a trigger or because I mean, for context, I've never spoken publicly about this before, but I had a drug problem when I was a teenager, like quite a bad one. And that led to, and I mean, like now alcohol is as far as I will push it. Like I might have like a glass of wine and that's like a rock and roll for me. But it took for, I guess my kind of drug abuse, if you like, wasn't actually the drugs. It was depression and anxiety and all these other things that were happening. And it was just manifesting itself in sort of self-destructive behavior because it was easier to physically destruct myself than try and fix the self-destruction that was happening in my head.
I'm with you on that. And I think for me, the most, what's the word for it? Like a metanoia or a eureka moment for me was when I suddenly realized that what I was doing was there was always an underlying problem towards drink. And the reason for that was because every single day when we used to have meetings, when we used to so much, and I spoke about this in season 1 of the podcast plug, was that life revolved around drink, meetings, friends, football, dates. Everything was like, we're going out to drink. We're going to this restaurant. We're doing this. We're doing that. Working lunches. Everything was, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Fuck's sakes. It's bloody 2 PM. And even still, like, I think it was at that point, you know, of that building up after so long, I realized, okay, there was definitely something there which needed to change. And I think because it's seen as the norm, especially in this country and in London, that's the problem, is that so many people now, and after speaking about this, so many people came forward and had conversations with me and said, I'm going through a similar thing. So I almost feel like in speaking openly about my shit, I've then helped an entire room of people who are also going through a similar thing.
I feel like I've been through that journey with you a little bit, because when I first met you, I think you'd only just recently stopped drinking.
Yeah.
And when we were speaking about it off air when we did your podcast, and you were saying, I'm not really sure if I'm going to drink again or if I will drink.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of just playing it by ear. And now I feel like you're very sure on the life you want to live.
Yeah. Do you know what it comes down to? It's like, I almost started seeing it as a distraction. It goes back to seeing things in the club. When you see people spending that obscene amount of money and you're thinking this is one night and that's someone's like salary, that's probably someone's salary in like over 2 years as well, you know, and you're like, this isn't right. This money's not being spent in a way that betters my life or anyone around me. And interestingly, my mother at the time turned around to me and said, you can have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but the alcohol will always be the one that wins. And that point that she made stuck with me still to this day. And I think you suddenly realize, especially with an addictive personality, which I feel like all of us have got an addictive personality where
entrepreneurs really
100%,
because you have to.
Whether you're relentless, whether you're addicted to your business, as people who are addicted to sex, drugs, music, gym, you have to have a way that you target or put that energy into something, but others put it into things which don't benefit them, and some people do. It's all about how you convey that energy and the route that you choose to go down in your life. For me, the turning point was definitely realizing, oh my God, if I don't do something or change the way that I'm doing this, this isn't going to end well for me. Alcohol doesn't suffer, I suffer, you know? And again, I sort of didn't talk to anyone for like 4 months. I didn't. I just didn't. I was in Cambridge, like basically doing like rehab. I was like playing tennis every day, going cycling. I was like doing therapy. I was doing all these things to basically like remove myself, just distract myself completely, to get better. And I think that in that time, doing all of those things opened me up to being a better person, but then also made me realize I've got an addictive personality and I need to channel this in the right way. So then that was when I sort of really heavily started like, okay, I want to go to the gym every day. Bought like a really nice bike. I want to cycle like fucking 50k, 100k on the weekends. I want to do as much as possible, like just be that guy. And that was great because then like that has a positive impact on yourself. And there's no better feeling now, and I tell this to people all the time, than tiring yourself out during the day so much, being physically exhausted when you get home from cycling, from swimming, from running, from like whatever it might be, that you cannot do anything bar long for going to sleep. That is the best feeling. Obviously, I don't have kids, so I don't quite know what that's going to happen when I get older, and then they're crying and all the rest of it. Obviously,
you hire a nanny.
Probably. But that whole perception of, oh my God, I need to take care of myself. And the best way for you to take care of yourself is to exhaust yourself. And I've pushed myself to some crazy limits now. Like, I fucking ran a marathon for fun. Didn't do it in like London Marathon. I just fucking ran a marathon. I woke up literally, I kid you not, I woke up one day and I decided that I wanted to run a marathon that day. I found a route on Strava. I said, fuck this shit. Put my watch on, put my AirPods in, put my phone, and I just went. I was gone for like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. It was great. Loved it. Time weren't great, but like it was just the fact I just did it. Legs ached for like 3 days. Then after that, I was back on the bike doing 100k. And when you can exhaust yourself like that, there's no, like, that is just top tier. And I think that should be the thing. When people go to the doctors and they have a problem, instead of being, and this is the thing for me, back, because when I had the drinking problem, I was then given medication to try and sort of stabilize myself. I should have been prescribed exercise as a way to channel myself. That then takes up a large part of my time. I'll spend hours in the gym happily. Not like an unhealthy amount. Obviously, I love a steam and a sauna and a jacuzzi and all the rest of it and a massage and, but putting my energy and efforts into that is fantastic. And I'll tell you, some of the best ideas I've ever had have come from that. Not being at my office, not sitting at my desk with a notepad being like, oh, let me try and think of some like great idea. But they've come from a byproduct of just working out and sitting there and having these conversations with myself. The best time.
Some of my best ideas ever come when I'm in the gym. And like, I talk about this often, like exercise and my health is my first principle of that. And last week was terrible for me. I had the worst week. It was really stressful. Everything went wrong. And now I look back on it and I'm like, it's because I didn't exercise.
Yeah.
I didn't exercise all week last week because I quote unquote didn't have time.
Yeah.
And I know now I have to make time. Otherwise I do not have a good time. I'm conscious of time, speaking of the topic. You just exited, or you're about to exit from Zac Des brand. So what's next for Zac Des?
People ask me this question a lot. They say, what's next? The answer is I don't know. I just want to have time to recalibrate, find myself, and decide what I want to do moving forward. I think the difficult thing is that people always expect that you're going to do something that's going to be like as big as, or as big of it. And the thing is, it's like a lot of the times you just want to go in different directions or try different things. And there's a lot of businesses and a lot of opportunity that's there for me to go into, whether it be consulting roles or director of certain parts of businesses and things like that. And I think that spending quite a lot of time as an entrepreneur making the rules for myself, that's given me the freedom to enjoy a lot of life's luxuries on my own watch and time. I've taken a lot of them for granted, and I haven't been able to enjoy those moments as much as a lot of people would, because they've been so readily available, because I can make time for them. That I would quite like some more structure in terms of going and working with a team where I'm not the guy who's calling all the shots, to the point where, I can decide, an alarm goes off, I'm going to get out of bed at like midday or something, like, so I don't know in terms of what happens next or where I go. But I think for me, it's just about doing something that I find interesting and where I can leave a mark on it that's positive and helps others as well. That's the main thing for me. As with everything, it's about trying to do something where others are going to feel as though they can take value from it. That's where I get my joy.
I love that. And this is the last question. This is the question we ask every single guest on this podcast. And that is, what are the 3 things if you could go back and tell your 21-year-old self? Which wasn't that long ago for you, actually.
Do you know what? For me,
it was a while ago. It was 10 years ago for me.
I'll tell you what,
it wasn't that long ago.
If we go back and we do my 16-year-old self, because I feel like at that point there was a lot going on. The 3 things, I think the first thing would obviously be just to tell myself to keep going. Like, fuck all this shit, you'll be fine. Like, and probably also, I guess, part and parcel of that is not to sweat the small stuff, which is what I did. I was so... I need to worry about this, I need to worry about that. All that went out the window when I got older. And I realized things just fall into place. Like, just let go and let God. I think the other thing is, probably the big thing, is to not allow yourself to become a product of someone else's destiny. That was a big deal. Someone else might have a route or what they feel is like the necessary path for you to go down. Don't focus on that. Whether it takes you today, tomorrow, this year, next year, whenever, when you figure out what it is you want to do and the route that you want to go down, do it on your own time for yourself, because that will bring you the biggest sense of accomplishment. And I think the last thing is, don't get too complacent, too cocky, and always be ready to feel uncomfortable. Because as I've realized in life, the best feeling is being in uncomfortable situations, because that's when you can often thrive. Whether that's in the gym and you're pushing yourself, whether that's you take on a task and you're not necessarily sure how it's going to turn out, like, it just comes down to that moment of trying to work out how you push forward. That for me is the best.
Nothing good grows in your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you so much, Zac.
Thank
This has
you.
been amazing. Thank you.